Hello and welcome to Solar Alberta's 2025 Solar Show, our 11th annual. Today's session is called Live Wires, Electricians at the Heart of the Solar Revolution. Please note that we have enabled closed captioning for this presentation. You can turn that captioning on in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will be recording this session and making it available on our website and YouTube channel following the show. My name is Heather McKenzie and I am the Executive Director at Solar Alberta. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge that I'm hosting you today and working day to day from Amiskwaciwaskahigan, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is located on Treaty 6 territory and the homelands of the Otipemisiwak Métis Nation. Treaty 6 territory is the traditional gathering place and home of many Indigenous peoples, including the Papaches, Nehewak or Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Blackfoot, and Nakota Sioux, nations whose ancestors have cared for and nurtured these lands since time immemorial. We were delighted to have so many people register for this week and for this event in particular. To start, just want to thank Ecol Electric, our sponsor for this session today. Really happy and grateful to have them as a sponsor. Today we're going to be hearing from Rayanne Wadey, Kai Ferron, and Tanner Robertson. Following the presentation, there's going to be a question and answer period in which you can all participate. We're going to be using Zoom Q&A for the questions rather than the chat box. So please enter your questions in the Q&A section and you can click on the little thumbs up symbols to upvote questions that you like. The entire session is going to wrap up in an hour and a half. To begin, I'd like to encourage you all to check out our online Solar Show trade show. We have listed on this slide and in the chat all the wonderful organizations who are participating in the trade show. To view their exhibitor booths, which include a listing of key solar-related services, contact info, and video introductions, please click on the link in the chat. And before we move forward, we're going to do a quick poll to get a sense of who we have joining us today. Please take a minute to answer the question that will be popping up on your screen. All right, and while some are doing the poll, I just want to encourage you to take a minute to pop your name, land acknowledgement, and any contact info that you're comfortable sharing in the chat now and throughout the event so that others can look you up on LinkedIn or email you, and hopefully you can stay connected. All right, I'm seeing those responses coming in. This is great. Give you one more second for that. Okay, thank you so much for participating. Let's have a look at those results here. We've got a whole bunch of solar and solar-related industry professionals here in the house tonight. Welcome. Some students, I was hoping you would be here. Researchers and academic folks, and the solar curious, maybe thinking about whether family members of yours should also join the sector. Friends and partners, welcome as well. So thank you so much for all coming today. And we're going to dive in. I'm going to share a little bit about who we are for anyone who's new to Solar Alberta. This is actually our 34th year of operation. We're a nonprofit society dedicated to accelerating Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. We do so by advocating, educating, and serving as an industry and community hub for solar energy. Our membership is made up of over 240 individuals and over 160 businesses. We also have over 31,000 followers. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory through our website. In this way, we act as a bridge for installers, suppliers, and other solar-related businesses to connect with their customers and clients. Our directory gets over 48,000 hits each year. You can see a screenshot of the directory here on this slide and a link to it in the chat. And there you can filter our directory based on the services provided by our members, the region of the province or country where our members operate, and by the various commitments made and certifications held by our members. In addition to the industry-oriented workshops scheduled during the Solar Show, we're once again offering affordable courses for solar industry professionals or those looking to transition into the sector. Most of our courses are online Tuesday and Thursday evenings. First up, Solar PV Systems Design and Modeling. That's going to start on February 11th. And on the first weekend in April, we're actually offering an in-person course in Calgary, solar PV systems, commissioning, operations, and maintenance. We're once again offering our solar training course bundle. So that's a discounted bundle, which includes all 3 of our technical courses. And the link to purchase the bundle and all of our courses is going to be popped in the chat. On-demand recordings of our courses are also available for sale alongside our paid workshops in the solar training videos section of our website. In addition to our courses, we run a number of educational programs, including our solar seminar series, a number of in-person and online networking events each year. Our next solar series session is Alberta, Agrivoltaics 101, Solar and Farms Unite. It'll take place on March 20th at noon. Registration for that seminar can be completed through the link in the chat, and we're also popping in a link for our March 11th Solar Women's Gathering. It's not too late to register for the other sessions for this solar show either. Each of the sessions for this solar show, there are 7 more after tonight, are open for registration until an hour before each event. And in addition to providing education, as I mentioned, we do advocate. We are currently rising up for renewables, and we have free lawn signs available for pickup in 10 municipalities, and we offer free delivery in 8 municipalities thanks to our amazing volunteers. We have a template letter for you, actually multiple, on our website asking the government of Alberta to eliminate the new and discriminatory buffer zones that they have established for renewable energy in the province. You can click on the link in the chat to make a free sign order and find our template letters today. If you're not already, I encourage you to join and become a member of Solar Alberta. Individual memberships are typically $35, but they're on sale this week for just 20% off. So you can purchase those through the chat. And if you're looking to support our work in other ways, you can also become a volunteer or donate. We actually have 1 position available for on our board this coming year. So the position will be filled at the May 7th AGM. And if you're interested in volunteering on our board, you can use the link in the chat to apply by March 16th. And with your help, we're recognizing longtime dedicated contributors to solar in Alberta. We're gifting them free lifetime Solar Alberta memberships. So if you're currently a member and you know someone who's contributed a lot to the sector over the years, you can find the link in the chat to nominate until April 16th. And the award recipient will be announced at our AGM. A list of our previous recipients can be found on our website, and you'll be hearing from one of them tonight. Finally, we ask that you please consider participating in our 50/50. It's already over $2,100, and ticket sales end on Friday with the end of our solar show at 12:55. We're going to wrap up the solar show by doing our draw. And now, without further ado, I want to take this opportunity to give a shout out to ECOL for sponsoring this session. We couldn't offer all this amazing free content without them. And we're always interested in developing more partnerships for events. So if you or your organization want to work with us on that, you can just fire us an email at sponsors@solaralberta.ca. Now I'm delighted to get this session underway by welcoming Katea Betty Latondra to the opening of the solar show. She's going to kindly open the session with a blessing again. This is actually Miss Betty's 5th solar show with us. She's come to every single online solar show, so she's our most dedicated solar show participant online. Thank you for that, Miss Betty. Miss Betty exemplifies the principles of Pimatassawin, the Indigenous way of life. As a proud Cree woman and direct descendant of Chief Big Bear, her life's work reflects a deep commitment to honoring her cultural heritage through leadership, advocacy, teaching, and community engagement. As manager of the Edmonton Catholic School District's Council of Elders, Miss Betty provides Indigenous guidance rooted in traditional teachings and her connection to elders. She integrates these teachings into education, fostering cultural understanding and spirituality within diverse communities. Her efforts extend beyond education, collaborating with organizations such as the City of Edmonton and the Edmonton Police Commission, the University of Alberta and Calgary, and various governments and community agencies. Through these partnerships, she advocates for respectful, equitable, and inclusive policies, promoting reconciliation and social justice. Miss Betty's leadership is grounded in her vision of a unified society free from discrimination, where inclusion and acceptance thrive. Her impact has been recognized with numerous accolades, including the Esquire Lifetime Achievement Award, Inspires Guiding the Journey Award, and the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal. A devoted mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, Miss Betty continues to inspire through her dedication to family, community, and the principles of Pimitasuen. Her unwavering commitment serves as a beacon for reconciliation, cultural pride, and unity across Canada. We are so honored to have you here with us today, Miss Betty. Thank you for joining us once again. We really appreciate your willingness to bring a blessing and land acknowledgement to our special event this week. And I will turn the mic over to you now.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. Hello and tansi. As Heather said, my name is actually Elizabeth, but I've used Betty for many years, so that's my other name that I use. And I thank you for having me for these past 5 years, and it's been great being part of this solar show and being part of this group. And tonight I feel it's special because we have the electricians, plus all the other people that are online, and of course to Heather and her team. When I talk about the solar and talk about, working together as a whole for our future generations, those yet to come and those that are here. In my upbringing, we all need help in whatever we do in life. You cannot do life on your own. It's like the sun, our energy that brings energy and heat to us, human beings. When the sun comes up in the east every day, whether it's cloudy or not, it comes up slowly and it doesn't come really bright for a couple hours. And as it starts to progress and become more light and so on, we have all these other elements that are helping that sun come up and be strong as it gives us that energy and that heat. That's just like human beings. We need to work together. That's one of our teachings from where I come from, and those stories that were instilled in us from young children. And I come to you tonight and say thank you again for having me, and that what an honor it's been. And especially tonight, as I was thinking earlier and been reading about solar and electricity, electricians, etc. And finally, all that is coming together because we can't do one without the other. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And of course, always working for those that can't speak for themselves. And of course, for those children in our classrooms, that we need to teach them well how to take care of our mother, the earth, we call it. Our whole being depends on that. The world around us and them for sure. And we need to leave this earth a better place than what we found it. And that's by working together and making these changes. Because I was growing up, we never had any of this. And that's why I'm grateful, because I see such beautiful things happening and saving our planet and working with each other. So I thank you again, and I look forward to what's going to be coming this year. And the politicians will be politicians. And we, as the people who care and support one another, what's happening to our environment, will make a difference by communicating, by talking to one another, and foremost, not to be afraid of each other, because we all have something to share. And that's just how I live my life. So again, thank you for having me, and much blessings to you all. As I'll say a little prayer in my language, which is Cree. My first language is my language. English is my second. How mamoktawi mau tamagito no naskatipska. Kawitsi at sikakyo isinuak. Tamagino kakyo ni taisino. Kaksikumigo egomena. Eganando kagin patsik. Tamage matsik. Istanano magak. Kawitito ya. Kakamemuya. We ask that you bless those who are less fortunate creators, especially on these cold days, that they find some peace and to come to the light of the awakening, and all those children, especially sometimes who suffer without enough food, shelter. Please, Creator, ask us your name, that you give them that strength and the peace, and we will be here, there to help them when they come forward and ask, that we will be there. I ask this in your name, Creator, and bless all those who come tonight. Bless all the ones that are online too. Keep them safe. Keep us warm in our thoughts. Ixumagapsis, thank you. That's all for now. Bye, bye.
Hi, Miss Betty. Thank you so much. It's really special to have you here again for our fifth solar show in a row. And of course, really special to hear your words tonight. So I want to share a little bit about the impetus for this session in particular. Miss Betty touched on it already, the electricians who are so integral to our solar sector here. I think with those remarks, Miss Betty, we're well positioned to introduce the electricians now, and I appreciate that. So thank you. In Alberta, it's quite unique. You actually have to be a master electrician to pull a solar permit here. So that's something that I'm not sure everybody in the audience is aware of. You might be wondering, why are you featuring electricians tonight? And really, it's because of the unique position that electricians play in the solar sector here in Alberta. It is not the case in every jurisdiction that you have to have a master electrician to pull a solar permit. But it is the case here in Alberta, and that provides super important consumer protection here in Alberta. But it also safeguards the industry and makes sure that we have a strong reputation and that the solar sector in Alberta stays strong. So that's part of why we're featuring electricians tonight. The other reason we're featuring electricians is because as a result of the requirement to have electricians to pull permits in Alberta, we actually have a dearth of solar electricians. It's really obvious every week when Solar Alberta goes to pull the jobs from all of our members' websites. We go to 160 websites and we're frantically pulling all the different jobs, and week after week after week, they're looking for electricians, people willing to become electricians. They're just really trying to keep up with demand. And we have many of our members are booking, sometimes 8 months out because they're so desperate for electricians. So we thought, okay, well, here we can do something about that. We can feature electricians. And by featuring electricians at our solar show, hopefully we can attract more electricians to the sector. So tonight we're going to feature 3 extremely wonderful electricians, all of whom we hope will inspire you to either become an electrician or encourage people that you know to become a solar sector electrician, because we think their journeys are inspiring to hear from. So first up, we're going to hear from Kai Farion. And Kai's the co-CEO of Zeno, a leading force in Canada's solar energy industry. Welcome, Kai. With over a decade of experience in solar and more than 4,000 solar projects completed, Kai has dedicated his career to advancing sustainable energy solutions and empowering others to create a cleaner, greener future. Born in Germany and raised in Canada, Kai grew up deeply influenced by a family legacy of sustainability, one that began with his grandfather, a pioneer in the engineering of solar projects in Eastern Europe. This foundation inspired a lifelong mission to preserve our planet and reduce humanity's carbon footprint. In 2015, Kai co-founded Zeno to address gaps in how energy is used and perceived, uniting technology, innovation, and people to drive meaningful change. As co-CEO, Kai leads special projects, scales the business, and fosters a collaborative team culture dedicated to Zeno's vision of reducing humanity's carbon impact by installing solar on 1 million homes by 2040. As the solar industry evolves, Kai is passionate about highlighting the pivotal role of electricians in the renewable revolution. He aims to inspire, connect, and energize the community to drive the next wave of innovation in solar power. Outside of his professional life, Kai thrives on pushing boundaries, whether completing an Ironman in Austria or championing sustainable solutions through impactful initiatives. So welcome, Kai. So glad to have you here. Before I turn the mic over to you, I'm going to just introduce Rayanne and Tanner as well, and then you'll take it away. So Rayanne Wadey, our second speaker tonight, graduated from NATE's Alternative Energy Technology program in 2013. After graduation, she worked on installing solar and was indentured as an apprentice electrician. She has also worked for various electrical contractors to gain experience from different areas of the industry for a couple of years. And she earned her Journey Person electrical ticket in 2017, went back to working for a solar company where she was able to gain a lot of valuable experience from being involved with every stage of the project development, including sales, design, permitting, and installation. She has been working at NATE since 2019, where she teaches in the Alternative Energy Technology program. She teaches primarily electricity fundamentals, solar PV design, codes as well, and her favorite part of working at NATE is having the ability to make a difference through training the future members of the solar and renewable energy industry. So welcome, Rayanne. We're super excited to have you here tonight as well, and we'll hear from you after Kai. And our third speaker tonight is Tanner Robertson. Tanner grew up in the small town of Windermere, welcome Tanner, BC, moved to Calgary in 2005 after graduation to pursue pre-employment electrical training at State College. With 19 years of experience in the electrical trade, he has developed a diverse skill set across residential, commercial, industrial, and solar projects. He holds a master's in the electrical trade and is a certified Class A field representative, bringing expertise and a high attention to detail on every project. He's been passionate about solar energy for the past 6 years, gaining experience in various roles, including installer, estimator, project management, and now as the founder of Flux Renewables. As the CEO and founder of Flux Renewables, he is committed to helping his clients achieve financial freedom from the ever-increasing cost of energy. He prioritizes the aesthetics of homes, ensuring his solar solutions not only enhance their value, but also blend seamlessly with their design. His clients typically save more on energy costs each year with solar than they would by staying with traditional power sources, making it a smarter and more cost-effective choice for the long term. So welcome, Tanner. You and I will just come back on after all three of you had told your stories. I'm going to turn the mic over to Kai now to begin our storytelling, and thank you all for coming tonight to share with us.
Thanks, Heather. Appreciate the introduction. Share my screen here. All right, we'll kick it off. So this is a page about Zeno. So Zeno is a residential home solar solutions company that's celebrating 10 years this year. So I'll explain a little bit how we got there. But we operate across Alberta, so Calgary, Edmonton, Lethbridge, and then also in Ontario and Mississauga. So you get to look at all these stats, and it is always funny to see where we've come. So I like to speak about where I have been. So my journey started when I was a very young kid, when I was 5 years old. So I moved here, as Heather kind of mentioned, from Germany to Canada. My parents made the big jump, and the reason that ties into my career is because as I moved here, I started to realize more and more why my parents moved here. So my parents made the switch to Canada because of health problems that my sister and I had. And so the two countries they were able to pick from was Canada and actually New Zealand. And so they had been to Canada before, so they chose here, and I'm very lucky that they did. So we landed in Alberta, the province of energy. And so as I grew up, I started to get more stories from my parents and learn more about the environmental impacts that we were having. And so one of the cool things I learned from that is that my grandpa and my dad were actually involved in solar projects 30 to 40 years ago. And so they designed solar projects for a hospital in Yemen, and all different projects across Europe. And so as I started to realize that, I thought it was a super cool industry. I started to appreciate the engineering side and then also the electrical side. So when the opportunity for me came to kind of get into my career after high school, I decided that being a sous chef wasn't for me and went into the electrical trade. And so as I went into the electrical trade, I learned a lot of different things. I learned that this is a trade with so much crazy variety. You can do pretty much anything in one province or in one location. So I had a little bit of a hard time figuring out which area I wanted to go into. So I started in the residential side of things and wired houses, worked for a local company here in Calgary. And as I kind of wired houses and got better at that, I ended up looking at how do I diversify my skill set. And so I went into a bit of commercial side of things. And then from there, I went into the industrial space and kind of tried to learn every piece of the electrical trade as I could. That's the nice thing as well here in Alberta is you can really work in all different sectors. You can work in residential, commercial, and industrial, which isn't very common across other areas of the country. And so as I did that, I started to realize more and more back to my roots and me as a kid and the energy profile here in Alberta. And so that made me go into different wind projects in southern Alberta, working on substations, things like that. And then luckily I landed into the solar space. And so that kind of kicked off the journey in the solar side of things and got me to where I am today. The nice thing about that is that I was able to kind of go through the apprenticeship program. And when I look at the apprenticeship program here in Alberta, it's super cool. It was always nice because you get to work with a business. You get to kind of do your first year, you get your hands-on training, which if the other people in this room here, I'm a hands-on learner. I can do the books, I can make it work. And with today, I have to do it, but I love hands-on work. And so what you could do is you can actually go through the system and you get to work for 10 months for a business. And then you get to go to SAIT or NAIT are kind of the main ones here in Alberta that you can go and actually do your studies. And so the nice thing about that is you get a break. There was nothing better than when I used to work in the field and then I used to get that break. And normally, as most people here are probably in Alberta right now, it is minus 30, if not colder, and working outside can be a bit of a pain. It has to be doable sometimes, it can be a pain. So you got to go back to school and kind of go through that journey. And so that's a 4-year program. And then by the end of it, you get to be a journey person. And if you pass both tests, you get to be Red Seal and you can actually work across all of Canada, which is super amazing. You get to kind of see different areas. I got to work in Saskatchewan, BC, all those kind of places. And then also after that, I got to do my master electrician ticket. So I think Heather mentioned quickly there, that is a piece of that journey as well, is being able to pull permits here in Alberta. You have to have your master electrician ticket. In BC, it's called an FSR. It's slightly different, but that kind of ties into the solar space. So as you kind of get into the solar, there's so much variety. The cool thing about this space is that it's new. It's still, as much as I've been in it now for over 10 years, it's still new. It's exciting. It's something that a lot of people still don't understand. If we're being honest, a lot of people don't really understand how solar still works and what the electrical aspects are to it. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much 90% electricians that have to do it. There's obviously sales and design aspects and engineering, all that, but it's mainly electricians running it. And so when you kind of get into the trade and work on the solar side of things, you get to really see the impact that you make. I think that was one of the things that really got me excited about this industry, is that I get to leave most homes better than I found them. And so as my parents always told me when I was younger, is leave the planet better than you found it. And what better way to do that than throw solar panels on people's houses? So as kind of that evolved and my career evolved, I went through different positions. I got to do project management, which is an aspect of kind of managing the projects themselves and dealing with the clientele, sitting a bit more in an office, which, if I'm being honest, wasn't as exciting, but at least I got to kind of go in the field and still work with the individuals that are working with us and kind of put up panels when I needed and help out in that way. Then as that kind of evolved, I got to do pricing, estimating, which is super cool. You get to work on actually learning the different aspects of a project. So you get to see, what does the cost look like? What does the project design look like? What's actually needed for you to put those panels on the roof? And I think the cool thing about that is that can be an electrician doing that. There's no really black and white path for an electrician. You don't have to go and become an apprentice and work your way through and become a journey person and then stay a journey person your whole life. Now you can, because it can be super exciting and there's so many different areas, and actually quite a bit of people do. We're lucky enough within the business, we have a lot of those individuals that's what they thrive on. They love doing that. They love going up on the roof. They love seeing happy clients. They love being that front of line worker that interacts with the client and gets to do the projects. But you don't have to do that. You can go into estimating, which I just explained. You can go into project management. You can go project coordinator, which is kind of like working with the project managers and the estimating to get projects done and make sure that permitting and all those aspects are in place. And so going through that journey is really cool. It's never boring. I don't think I have had a boring day in the last 10 years or plus of being in this role or being in this industry. And so that kind of can evolve as well. You can get even into management positions, like I mentioned. You get into vice president positions. And then I'm lucky enough to be in the co-CEO side of things today. Now, that's kind of the evolution of my career and where I've gotten to with the business. And like you saw on the last slide is where kind of the business is today. But I want to tell a bit of a story about some individuals within the company that have also gotten to really cool positions and have worked with us for a long time, especially they've started in the electrical side. So they were apprentices. They worked their way up through the apprentice side of things. They showed a really good kind of foresight to be in different positions within the trade. And so they built themselves into project managers, and then actually now as big as area managers. They manage whole areas for us. They manage a large portfolio of clientele. And this is all because they were electricians. They literally started their career in the trade, putting up panels or working in houses or whatever area of the trade they wanted to. And so it's cool to see the path that you can have, and that it's not linear. It's not the same for everyone. It's very, very diverse, and it's very, very rewarding. You can make it as rewarding as you want. And you can also have kind of a career path that you want and that you can be happy about, and they can kind of show that you've given back to the environment and created a career that's amazing in that way. So that's a little bit about my journey. I'll turn it over to the next speaker and then obviously for the question and answer. So thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Kai. Rayanne, if you wouldn't mind telling us your story next, we'd love to hear from you now. There you are. Welcome.
Yeah, hey. Thanks, Heather. As Heather mentioned, my name is Rayanne, and I work at NATE as an instructor in the Alternative Energy Technology program. And along the way, I also got an electrical ticket, which I'm going to tell you about. But working as an electrician and my experience in the field has had a major impact on my career, and I'm excited to tell you about that. So just if you're not familiar with the program at NATE that I teach in, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that first. So we are a 2-year diploma at NATE. We are not a trade. And we have a lot of graduates from this program that end up working in the solar industry as electricians. I was one of them. And we cover all sorts of things, the foundations of what is energy efficiency, some building sciences, and then we get into individual clean tech, clean technologies like solar, of course. We actually have 2 classes at NATE that are just on solar, wind, geothermal, biofuels. I can't forget about that one. Hydro and cogeneration. And then we also cover design optimization of all of those, hybridization, project management, energy auditing. And then we finish off with a capstone at the end where students get to showcase the skills they've learned over the program and work with an industry partner. And we do have many of them that are working with solar companies. So that was pretty cool. I did not get to work with a solar company when I did my capstone, but anyways, so how I got into this industry started way back in 2010 or so. I was trying to figure out what to do and didn't really have a focus. I was prepared for almost anything, but nothing really caught my interest. And I was handed an article about this new program at NATE called Alternative Energy Technology. And it was the first thing that had interested me for more than about a week. And I applied and I was accepted. And you would think that that was maybe it. I went to school, but I actually spent an entire month agonizing over whether I should spend the contents of my bank account on tuition or if I should buy myself a diesel truck. And I'm from Edson. That might make a little bit more sense. If you're familiar with Edson, it is a small town in Alberta, oil and gas dominated, and I didn't really know anything different. So I ultimately made the right decision. I went to NATE. And over that 2 years, the program was a lot different then. We still did learn about solar, but actually for a very brief amount of time, about 4 weeks of solar PV, but it caught my interest. And when I graduated, I also didn't really know what I wanted to do. But because I was set on going back to Edson, there was even less career opportunities for me or job opportunities. So if any of you are familiar with the renewables and solar industry from back in like 2012, 2013, it was very new and there wasn't a lot going on compared to now. And it was very interesting trying to find a job. So my classmates and I would go talk to companies and say, hey, we have this cool education. We can look at energy efficiency stuff. We understand energy. We can look at your building and find opportunities to make it better. And they kind of looked at us and went, wow, that's cool, but we have no idea what to do with you. And then going back to Edson, that was almost impossible. So I thought, what could I do that would pair with my diploma? Well, electrician. And with a farming background, I'm a very handy, practical person, along with being pretty smart in the classroom. And I didn't think I was going to have a hard time finding a job. It seemed like a natural fit for me. But it took me a couple of months of really, really trying to find a job. I had some very funny conversations and interviews. I suspect my difficulty in finding a job was somewhat related to the industry being quite slow. I wasn't looking for a solar job, just to clarify. It was a regular just apprenticeship. Things were a little bit slow in the spring of 2013, but I also got asked things like, you do know you're going to have to be working with men, right? And I suspect they just didn't think I could cut it. So I did eventually get hired by a solar company out of Edmonton, and they indentured me. I'm very grateful for that experience. I learned a lot. And in 2013, I got to work on a couple of record-breaking projects. So just for perspective of how far this industry has come, 142 kilowatts of rooftop commercial solar was a record-breaking project in 2013. And I got to work on it. That was my second solar job that I got to work on. And then my third one was another record-breaking project of 124 kilowatts of building integrated solar in Camrose. And those were really cool projects. That was an incredible experience to be able to work on that. Solar is the joke amongst my friends that work in the industry is that the job experience can sometimes be, I pick things up and I put things down. But there was something about seeing the solar be installed that was just incredible. I loved taking photos of it. I loved admiring it. I just loved the end product, and I still do. It didn't matter how bad the weather was or how steep the roof was or anything like that. I just loved taking photos of it afterwards and going, wow, we did that. It looks amazing. So I only worked for that company for 5 months, and I ended up going back to Edson because I was apparently hung up on that location for a while. And worked for another just generic electrical company. I learned a lot working for them for a couple of years, and then made my way back to the city and did some commercial construction. But then in 2016, ended up working for the same solar company, and I got to work on more record-breaking projects. So 1.14 megawatts in Leduc was the largest rooftop system in Western Canada. If you were following the media and renewables at the time, it did make it on the news. So that was also really awesome. And then another megawatt project. And in 2016, we had about 9 megawatts of solar in Alberta, and I had been a part of about a third of it, which is just crazy to think about, because now that's like small potatoes. 9 megawatts is getting installed all the time, it seems like, with the solar farms. So that it's just to illustrate how much the industry has really grown since then as well. So and then after I got my ticket in 2017, because I was also going to school, I can definitely relate to what Kai said about taking a break in the winter, and you know, you get a little bit of time to reset and then go back. And it's also an opportunity to do something new. If you're looking for a change, maybe, you know, you're working at a company and you want to go try a different part of the industry out, get some different experience. It's also sometimes an easy exit to go work for another company. So in 2017, I went to go work for a really small startup solar company, where my experience and my diploma, so in addition, I also have that NAIT diploma, was quite valuable. And I was brought on to be generally the lead installer. I was doing a lot of design, and the photo on the left there is one of the projects I did in 2018 with that company. I was probably putting end clamps on or something. So I used to be afraid of heights as well. I had to get over that, obviously, because I wouldn't have been smiling otherwise. But and then I worked there for a while, and I got to see projects through from start to finish. There's really something incredible about making that first connection with a client, making a connection with them, and then going and installing that project. And it also is, it really hits when you have to install the project that you just quoted and, you know, gave somebody a price on. And that was a big learning experience, but it was good. And then, yeah, I've always had a passion for teaching. I've always been drawn to it. I really loved having apprentices or people that I could mentor. I also really like being mentored by other people, but I really enjoyed the teaching aspect of it. And when a job came available at NAIT in the program, the diploma program that started it all, I jumped at the opportunity to apply, and I got the job. And I've been working there since the fall of 2019. And I really like that I am able to bring that real world experience to that role and be able to share lessons learned. I'm not shy about mistakes I've made, including like safety things, or you know, it can be really hard when you're a young person and you're trying to fit in to stand up for yourself, especially with safety stuff. You know, oh, you can go up on that roof, it's fine. Actually, no, I'm gonna fall off. Or and I really enjoy that, or I really appreciate that I'm able to share those experiences with my students and give them that advice of, you know, if you find yourself in a situation like that, don't feel like you have to go through with it, because it's really important that you can stand up for yourself. But then also other things that, you know, like I did this thing, I learned the hard way. Maybe you'll remember this in the future. And I think that's really valuable for a teacher to be able to do. So, and then I've also, partly because of my time working as an electrician in the industry, I've had an opportunity to be a part of some really cool projects at NAIT. So the photo on the right there is a photo that was taken in Peru. And we've been taking a class of students down to Peru and partnering with a nonprofit organization called Light Up the World there that installs solar off-grid solar PV projects up in remote communities in the Andes where there's no timeline for when these communities are going to be getting electrical services in. And we've also been installing a satellite internet system for them, and this is all done in schools. So my background in installing solar and whatnot has also been a help with that company. So actually the concrete that's holding that system down now, it's not, I believe they did consult an engineer, but that was kind of my idea. They were going, how can we actually fasten this down to a concrete roof without drilling into it? And well, you know, you can ballast it. And so that was the inspiration for that. And it's been really cool having students in Peru and being able to show them things and having a little bit more of an idea of what's going on than maybe the average participant in those projects. So just to, you know, bring it back around, I really do think that the combination of that diploma and the my experience as an electrician and the ticket that I got from that really made my career what it is and gave me that knowledge that I wanted or needed to be successful in the industry. I would not have been where I am without either of those. And a lot of our graduates actually get into installing solar. We have a whole crew of them that graduate every spring that are going to be looking for work, and many of them are very much focused on getting into the solar industry. A whole bunch of them go into solar installing, and some of them stick with it. They get indentured. They see it through the 4 years. I really love seeing my past students in the hallways at NATE as they're working their way through their apprenticeship. Some of them only work for maybe a year or so in the field and then end up in other positions like designing or project management and our project coordination. And that part of that is because we've they have a really good technical foundation on how solar works, which is important because I've also worked with a lot of electricians who are great installers, but they could not tell you why they're installing what they're installing the way they are, other than it's to code, but they're not designers. So I do think that the combination of the two really was an opportunity to elevate my career beyond what it is. But anyways, that's my story. I started from redneck Alberta and ended up in the solar industry, which I'm very happy about. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing the next presenter and answering your questions later. Thanks.
Thanks, Rayanne. And I suspect there's probably a lot more solar in Edson now than there was when you graduated too. Seems like it's all over.
I've gone back there to install solar for people, so
nice. Yeah.
But it's still Edson.
It's all over the province now. It's amazing. Thanks, Rayanne. And Tanner, now we'd love to hear your story before we jump into our Q&A. We're just looking forward to it.
Sure. Thank you, Heather. Hey, everyone. My name is Tanner Robertson. I am the founder of Flux Renewables. Today, I want to share the non-linear journey that led me here, which is a 20-year path through the electrical trade, filled with challenges, lessons, and ultimately a passion for solar. If you're considering a similar career path, becoming an electrician in the solar industry can be incredibly rewarding, but it's not always a straight road. And my goal today is to help at least a few of the viewers consider a future in solar. So in the beginning, everything started off in high school, and like many high school students, I had no clue what I wanted to do after graduation. My parents guided me towards a life of engineering, but I really couldn't stand being in a classroom. So one day in grade 11, I asked my physics teacher, Mr. Fennell, what career would you pursue if you were to pursue a good pay without multiple years of school? His answer, become an electrician. So I did. In 2005, I moved from Windermere, BC to Calgary at 17 years old, enrolled at SAIT's pre-employment electrical program, and quickly realized I had no idea what I was doing. Even finding my first class was a challenge. I learned a lot through trial and error, but here's my first piece of advice. It's okay to feel like you have no idea what you're doing. That means that you're learning something new. If you're fresh out of high school, my recommendation would be to skip the pre-employment that I took and just start applying for jobs right away. Reason being is that most companies, including ours, will actually either help you out or pay for your reimbursement of the schooling. Not to mention there's multiple government programs to kind of help you through the schooling. And you can even apply for EI while going to school. And if you go straight to the pre-employment program, you can't actually apply for EI. So by 2010, I'd been in the trade for 5 years and I still wasn't finished my electrical apprenticeship, which should have taken 4. I was feeling quite stuck as a 4th-year apprentice, questioning, if I had made the right choice. And I kind of pushed myself to go back to school that year reluctantly. And I actually ended up failing 4th-year electrical, which I haven't told a lot of people. It was discouraging. And to this day, it was one of the toughest things to stomach. But in my head, I just wasn't kind of ready for it that year. But I kind of told myself that that was okay. So what I did is I took a break. I jumped on a plane to Mexico, which I do quite often. And I visited my dad. I pitched a tent in the desert. And I thought pretty seriously about leaving the trade altogether. But when I returned to Canada, I stepped away from electrical and I started working for a friend and co-founded a construction company kind of on a whim. But after 10 months, I ultimately decided that I should go back to electrical and finish my apprenticeship. So I went back, and then this time I went to industrial and oil field sector. So 2011, when I joined the oil field sector, I actually joined a company out of Red Deer called Techmation, and I worked on some of the most remote projects imaginable. So one of the projects I remember quite well was about 40 minutes helicopter ride up just north of Fort Nelson. And it was completely isolated, so you had to fly in, fly out. So I jumped on a plane from Calgary to Fort Nelson and then jumped on a helicopter to this remote camp. The shifts weren't easy, but it paid off. By the following year, I saved enough to buy my first house in Calgary. So I ended up actually quitting the remote work to take a job in town, because ultimately the remote work just wasn't for me. I felt like I was missing just about every event back home. Birthdays and Christmas and just about everything, you name it, you feel like you're missing out on it. So when I did quit the remote work and took the job in town, I actually re-enrolled in my final year of electrical. And this time I passed with flying colors. So I got a 93% that year. And I was finally a journeyman electrician by 2022 or 2012. So that was during the boom. Basically, oil and gas was pretty dominant then. And I remember housing was in such a high demand that I actually rented out my couch that year to friends that were just looking for a place to crash. I worked hard the following years with the skills I had learned from being so indecisive. It wasn't a complete waste kind of jumping around, because you do start to learn other skills that definitely help you be successful in electrical. By 2015, I went back to school to get my master's electrician certification. I worked full-time while studying. I don't know if many of you kind of know what the master's is like, but you go to SAIT or your chosen school, and you just take night classes. So it's about 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. during the week for about 3 months. And then you just need to make sure that you know that code book inside and out when you take the final exam. And I ended up passing that while working full time and starting a side business that I never really pursued. It was called Omni Electric Incorporated. The reason I didn't pursue it is just because I felt uninspired about the general electrical trade. And it wasn't until 2019 when I actually got really inspired to be in the electrical trade as an electrician. So in 2019, I actually joined one of Alberta's now largest solar companies, and it revitalized my drive as an electrician. I spent the next 2 years just kind of improving the field processes as best I could, working out as a journeyman solar installer. I helped them scale from about a modest team of about 5 to a powerhouse of over 100. I love the work, but the physical toll was quite heavy on the body, as I'm sure many of you can relate to. After years of handling the 50-pound solar modules, my back ended up kind of giving out a little bit, and I was pulled into the office as a estimator for the company, followed by a couple of years of project management. As the company expanded, I had hoped that my efforts would be reflected in my career growth. I returned from an abrupt personal leave and was informed that my position was no longer available, which was devastating at first, but in hindsight, it was the best thing to ever happen to my career in the renewable sector. I'm a strong believer that everything happens for a reason, and this was kind of the push I needed to start Flux Renewables. My departure came with unexpected challenges, including an attempt to enforce restrictive covenants, which would have limited my future opportunities in the solar industry. Ultimately, though, these restrictions were found in court to be unenforceable, thankfully, reinforcing my stance on the covenants as a whole. I kind of want to mention just how I strongly believe that the non-compete clauses that extend beyond a worker's employment do hurt the solar industry, and I definitely hope that they're reevaluated in the future. A lot of the challenges that we see as industry leaders is being able to hire skilled labor, and these restricted covenants definitely intimidate and trap skilled workers, and ultimately do slow down the Alberta energy growth. So I hope to see Solar Alberta address this kind of thing in the future, because it's definitely, we should be definitely encouraging talent, not restricting it. After parting ways, I knew it was time to take control of my own future. So once left, I actually went home, went to straight to Memory Express and bought my first laptop and got to work. 2 days later, after turning my dining room table into a home office, Flux Renewables was born. Since then, my biggest challenge 2 years later, I would say, would be growing the business, or sorry, it hasn't been growing the business, but navigating the outside interference. In my opinion, competition, though, is a good thing. It drives innovation, improves quality, and ultimately benefits Albertans who want to take control of their own energy. So my advice for anyone considering the electrical trade or the transition to the solar industry is to just keep showing up. You'll find success, and there are so many different directions that you can take as an electrician in Alberta. There will be days or even years where you feel like, you know, life is steamrolling you, but persistence does pay off, and don't let anyone stop you. I strongly encourage anyone who's on the fence about a career in the trades to jump right in and see if it's for them. You never know where it may lead you. As the others have mentioned, there's kind of multiple different directions that you can take. as soon as you start kind of your indentureship. And I'm very excited to see where the future of solar energy as a whole ends up taking Alberta and the country. But that concludes my story, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Tanner. That was really interesting. I too ended up quitting a job when I was handed a contract that had a non-compete kind of clause in it, and I said that doesn't look legal.
Yeah,
So it's
it was one of the
interesting.
biggest struggles, but I decided to share it. I wasn't too
Yeah.
sure if I was going to.
No, I appreciate you sharing. It's really nice to hear open reflections tonight. And Rayanne and Kai, if you wouldn't mind joining us on screen now, we're going to jump into our Q&A, and we'll take a minute ourselves to discuss some of my questions while others hopefully populate the question and answer box here. I do see one question already there, so thank you for that. And more people can pop some in while I ask a couple questions myself. Really interesting to hear your stories. I don't have a technical background myself. I suppose, unlike you, Tanner, I sort of enjoy the classroom too much. So definitely spent a little too much time there and no time in the real world, so to speak. But I wonder what you would say. One of the biggest challenges I hear is that it's really hard to attract electricians to the solar sector from the oil and gas sector. If I'm not mistaken, electricians in the solar sector can make maybe 80,000 a year. If I could be estimating wrong, but I've heard in the oil and gas sector they can make, sometimes 3 times as much or something like that. So, what would you say to folks who are trying to weigh their options and ultimately deciding to shift to the solar sector? What would attract them if not the pay? Anyone want to take a first stab at that? I mean, Tanner, you're the one who definitely worked in the oil and gas sector, so maybe you could go first. I'd be interested to hear how you encourage others to make that jump, because it seems like a pretty big pay jump.
It is a big pay jump. Basically, up in the oil and gas sector, you're working 12-hour days typically. You're working 10, sometimes 14. My longest stint was 24 days in a row. So you are able to create a lot of money in that time. And you do get the overtime pay in that sector. So jumping over into, either residential or commercial or solar, you do take a bit of a pay cut, but ultimately you do have that ability to wake up, in your own bed next to your significant other and with your family. So it is valuable in that sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That stability and just being able to stay home and build community around you and not have to be constantly traveling just to make ends meet. How about you, Kai? What's your big sales pitch when you're hitting up the oil and gas electricians?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've worked in oil and gas as well. I worked there for years up north, and it's unless you're really good with your money and you're mentally strong, it's a very hard industry to work in. Most people, it breaks you. It's one of the things that's never talked about here in Alberta is the mental aspect of that industry. I think being out of town and being away is a lot harder than people think. Money can't buy you happiness. That saying, I think a lot of people have heard, and it rings true to that. I think when you come back and the only thing you have is money, and that's your identity, it becomes very hard. And then I would just say the aspect of being 40 hours, you're in the city, you get to do things with your friends, you get to be a part of society, and you still get paid very well. We pay our electricians super well when it comes to different positions within the field that are very competitive with, if not more than a lot of electrical positions within Calgary. So overall, the pay for Calgary itself or Alberta or Ontario is really, really competitive. So
yeah, and I suppose your job is also a lot more secure when you look at these tariffs and whatnot. You think, gosh, that's going to hit the oil and gas sector workers a lot harder than it would hit the solar sector potentially. Although I'm not saying there aren't impacts on us too, but it did make me aware of how a lot of the pay in that industry is risk pay because your job could disappear tomorrow a lot more easily. And then, so you're not necessarily getting paid just for the here and now, you're getting paid for the here and when you get cut too, which is probably a lot more volatile. How about you, Ryan? What's your big pitch to the pro solar electrician versus electricians, as you mentioned, could go and do anything anywhere in the world. There's so many opportunities. How do you ever sell them on solar here?
Well, I didn't ever work up north, so I don't have that direct comparison. I did one small stint in a mod yard and ultimately got laid off like everybody else. So the work I also talking to everybody, it's very volatile. Unfortunately, I also experienced that in the solar industry when it was brand new, because we'd have a big job, we'd hire a bunch of people, we'd work for 6 months, and then, oh gosh, there's nothing to do in January, February, March, and oh, project's supposed to start in April, but it actually starts in June because of delays. I think it's way more stable than it used to be. Many of the people that I am in contact with, my friends that are in the industry, are actually working all year round now. And then it would be a very, very similar reasons as Tanner and Kai, for you're in the city, you are doing something that you enjoy doing, and it is you're not having to work out of town typically, though I also did work out of town for solar projects too. That's actually what had me working out of town the most. But then again, my experience working in solar is now quite a bit, like it's now in the 7 years old range, right? So
Yeah,
things have changed significantly since then.
yeah, even when I started here 5 years ago, people used to call it the solar coaster, but I've heard that it's like quite a bit more stable now. And even my neighbors had solar being installed, in the dead of winter the other day, and I thought, wow, that's surprising. That was not so common 5 years ago, but people are just on the move and they're trying to get it all done. I imagine with the climate changing too, it's putting up panels in December this year was probably not as oppressive as it would be actually this week. So there definitely would depend a lot on the weather. All right, I'm seeing some questions going here in the Q&A, so I'm just going to start prioritizing the most upvoted ones here. So we've got someone who's interested in the advice that kids can start straight out of high school. Do all panelists have the same opinion? I will say I've heard an interesting thing on that. I will let you all comment, of course. But one thing that a lot of our business members have told me is, yes, you can start right away, but they do want to see that you're interested in the environment. So they would like to, because they want to know you're going to stick around. So they'd like to see some kind of volunteerism or something out of high school that shows that you care. And sometimes they'd like to see that you've done a little bit of work. So either some workshops through Solar Alberta or some classes or just a little something to show that you're really passionate, and they're not going to train you today and you'll be gone tomorrow. So I have heard that at least a little bit of training is good. But yeah, that was interesting, Tanner. You mentioned that if you go right into training before apprenticing course, you don't have any of the EI supports or other things that workers might have when they're going through training. I had not thought about that myself going into school, and that is a very interesting consideration, especially for anyone who might not have parents who can pay their way or,
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes
privileges
it's
like
easier
that.
just to jump right in.
That's interesting. Yeah. Kai, anything on that topic of, the path and whether to jump in or whether it's worthwhile doing some preliminary schooling?
No, I would second Tanner's comment. I think that going into the trade, it's what I did as well. The pre-employment program's great. Don't get me wrong, Nate, say you've done a great job at it. It's really, really though hands-on experience. So if you can get into a company, they'll support you, they'll train you, and then you can also go through the schooling aspect with them, and then you can also switch companies if you're not liking it. So there's lots of opportunity, and I think especially right now more than ever, there's lots of jobs available where you don't need to go and spend that money. I don't even know how much it is anymore, but thousands of dollars to kind of get into that program.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, obviously, Rayanne, I'm going to end on your notes and give you the chance to plug the pre route. But I will say that when it comes to training for the solar sector, we're talking a lot about electricians tonight, but there are so many other roles that we're not talking about tonight where the pre-employment training might come in a bit more handy. For example, I've heard that some of our suppliers, the distributors, they always hire out of SAIT or NAIT or one of the programs, especially NAIT, because they really want that broad-based knowledge if you're going to be doing distributing. And so different roles within the solar sector might require a different level of training up front. And so it's interesting that tonight we're really focused on electricians. And so I appreciate that for that particular path. It makes more sense to obviously get paid while you go to school. How often do you know, how many jobs can you get paid while you go to school? I just think that's wonderful. And I don't know why more people don't do it. But Rayanne, maybe you could finish us off on that question and we'll jump into a few more here.
Yeah, well, I worked with some great people who were taking the RAP program in high school, and they had an electrical ticket by the time they were like 21, and probably 21. Anyways, they were some of the best people I worked with, but also I have yet to see somebody with the diploma I have it not be taken seriously when they want to go work for a company in solar. So having some proven, I guess, passion for that industry can also be quite helpful. And it's yeah, showing our students don't typically have any trouble getting hired by solar companies or indentured for that.
Yeah.
So both ways would be perfectly acceptable to go get some education or relevant experience and then try, or get somebody to hire you and learn it from the ground up in the field.
It sounds like either way you go, you're going to become a lifelong learner. It doesn't really matter. It's like even if you go right in, there's still going to be education all along the way. So that's interesting to hear and to learn. It's not like a one and done kind of process when you're an electrician. Even year to year, people are constantly upgrading. I know we've got a whole bunch of people jumping into our courses because the newer code has come out and now everyone's having to upgrade again. So even if you think you're done, you're probably not done done learning. It's actually funny, Tanner, when you mentioned you don't really like being in the classroom, because going into the path you've gone in probably results in you having to continually upgrade and go back into classrooms your whole life, as compared to someone who just goes and lands their PhD and they're kind of done.
I actually just ended up taking my updater course about a week ago for the 2024 code that's being rolled out here.
Yeah,
So
you're still going.
We do need to every 3 years take that updater course.
Awesome. All right, another question we have here. Okay, like your speaker that thrives on hands-on learning, why are there so few hands-on courses from solar conception, design to installation? Winter months would be ideal, slow times. It's interesting that you asked that, Bob. I will touch on that briefly, and then I'm curious to hear others. So we've added back in a hands-on course. We had to go online for COVID reasons. And then when we went online, it turned out we had people from all over the country taking our courses before they moved to Alberta. And so we wanted to continue making our courses accessible to people around the country. But there is that demand for hands-on. So we are bringing some of that back in Calgary in particular. One of the challenges we've had, and I think it kind of touches on that non-compete piece that you were touching on, Tanner, is finding the teachers. Because one of the challenges in the solar sector, and I'm sure this is probably across all sectors, is that it's so competitive that once somebody knows something, they don't necessarily want to teach it to everybody else, because then of course that's kind of like proprietary. They want that knowledge for themselves because it can kind of boost their career. So it's challenging to find the teachers, and especially teachers who are currently in the field. We've lucked out. We have a teacher who's from BC, so he's not in competition with any of you. So he could care less if you guys all know about solar. But it's challenging to find those local teachers who aren't worried about sharing that knowledge that they have in their head. But I'm curious to hear from the rest of you, Bob's question about why is it so hard to find hands-on courses for solar. Who wants to take a stab at that first?
I could.
Okay,
Um,
Rayanne.
Mainly because I've been working in that for quite a while. I was actually not through you, but I had been teaching some weekend courses while I was working in the field. And the company I was working for was okay with that because we were looking at it as making the industry better as a whole is better for everybody. Not everybody has that opinion on things. It is kind of hard to make or create a good, consistent, hands-on training course for solar because it takes up space. Solar also requires sun. So you can do all the fancy scheduling in the world that you want. And then guess what? It rains just in the 2 hours that you have the hands-on testing scheduled for. I deal with this all the time. We book labs and then it's beautiful sunny in the morning and we're going to go out and do a commissioning or a troubleshooting lab and we get all the equipment together and then there's a cloud, just one big cloud for the 2 hours that the lab is happening and then it's sunny in the evening. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges for hands-on training like that. I have big dreams. We have an array that's being installed on NATE right now, and I have designed a full fault simulation system to like test a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm very curious to see whether it actually gets installed like I want it to be. But again, that's super weather dependent. And another thing is that when I was teaching classes for like solar with electricians, it's not like electricians know how to put things together. That's not really an issue. It's not like I'm teaching you how to use a tape measure or how to put things together square. The issue was more, why are you installing what you're installing and what's the design process behind it? Because installing is installing, like you're putting things together. It's not like particularly difficult to do that in comparison to other electrical work. So it's finding that balance, I think, of accessible, you have the right space, you have the right equipment, and you also have the right weather.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the other challenge we learned was you also need to have students who are willing to eventually become electricians. I remember we once ran a solar training program with a partner of ours, and we had this wonderful class of students, and we were introducing them to some of our members and all this, and it suddenly became apparent that almost nobody in the class was willing to become an electrician. And when that dawned on the speakers and when that dawned on the students, it was like, whoa, you can do the in-person training, but if you don't have that willingness, that openness, and because what many of them were, they were laborers and they wanted to be laborers and they thought they could be solar installers as laborers. And I said, well, maybe on a solar farm you could, but rooftop solar, really almost everybody wants somebody who's interested in becoming an electrician. It's so important. And so finding that match too between the students and the teachers was a real challenge, and making sure you communicated that to all the prospective students was hard as well, that they needed to kind of at least have that openness, right? They seemed to feel like that was too daunting for a lot of them. How about you, Kai? What do you think about that? Why is it so challenging to get more hands-on teaching and learning in the province?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it comes back to experience and going into the trade. So I'll give an example. As I went through my electrical apprenticeship, in school, I didn't learn how to bend pipe, which is like an EMT conduit for commercial. I didn't learn how to do that. I didn't learn how to pull wire. I didn't learn how to wire an electrical panel or any of those aspects. It was the theory behind it that I learned in school, the code regulations, the reasons why those things are in play. And then I got to work with the business. And if you're working with a good, reputable company, they'll teach you. Like, for example, we have a full training course in-house for all apprentices. Everyone that comes on with us, they'll do a full hands-on solar training that can range anywhere from a week or two. They'll be in the field to be working with experienced individuals on our team to do that. So I think it's about figuring out the company that you want to work with, joining the correct team, and then getting that book side of things and a little bit of the hands-on from the actual SAIT or NATE side. As the solar industry grows too, Tanner mentioned the code just changed. I just did the update as well. That one there, like the code section for solar EV battery just keeps getting bigger. So it's going to be a bigger part of the curriculum and of the conversation that's being had in the school. Because as that industry grows, we're still a smaller chunk of the electrical side right now, but as it grows, it's going to be a bigger conversation point. So I would say learn that all through the school process in your apprenticeship, and then join a good company that can help you with the training side and the hands-on. You'll get the best learning.
It's interesting that you mentioned that batteries piece, because this week we are hosting an introduction to energy storage for the general public. It's not industry oriented. And I thought it might be a little bit too nerdy, but it's actually our most popular session of the week. Everybody's coming, and I thought, oh my gosh, things are about to explode on that side. Not the batteries, they're not going to explode, but the industry is going to explode, and that's pretty exciting. Anything to add on that, Tanner, before we move to the next question?
Not too much. I think that just with the way that solar is right now, it's a little bit cutthroat, and a lot of people don't want to kind of give their competitors too much information. So that might be a reason why there's not a lot of kind of hands-on, which there should be. I mean, I'd like to see a lot more hands-on training so that people can understand the right way to do an install, as opposed to just kind of slapping it up on the roof and kind of hoping for the best.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the companies have had to pull it in-house almost because there just isn't enough of it out in the community. And the other challenge I think we have is it seems that SAIT doesn't really offer a solar program or installation opportunities the same way NATE does yet. So given that the solar sector is explosive in southern Alberta, it seems like the lack of solar programming at SAIT is probably becoming a bigger and bigger issue. Would you say that that is part of the challenge there?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I definitely could see a lot more hands-on experience being valuable, because that's kind of how I learn as well. As Kai mentioned, we kind of have our own in-house training, whereas it takes about a month before we let someone kind of go off on their own after kind of learning how we do things.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. It's good to hear what it's like in the world. I guess if they're learning a lot of it on the job with your in-house training, that does take care of the weather issue that Rayanne's having in the classroom, because then you can really just, when it's the right day, it's the right moment, you can seize the opportunity if they're already there with you, instead of trying to plan it out and then the weather being terrible. So that's an interesting point. Another question here, and we just have 6 minutes left, so I'm going to try and get to the most upvoted ones here. Are electricians working in solar unionized? Can anyone touch on that for me? My understanding is some are, some aren't. Is that correct? Maybe you guys know that better than I, though. Rayanne, any insight on the unionized piece?
I can touch on that quickly.
Thanks, Kai. That would be helpful.
Yeah, as of right now, in the solar space, it's mainly not unionized. There's going to be locations across Canada where it is. Out east, there's a little bit more on the union side of the things for the electrician trade. But currently in the solar side, it's not as much. Up north, some of the out of town work will be unionized, but again, solar, not as much.
Okay. Anything to add on that? Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I guess it actually relates to one of the questions I had, which is, when people are coming from out of province or out of country and they want to become an electrician here, how do they do that? Do they have to start from scratch if they've been an electrician in another country? I've heard of whole teams of Ukrainians putting up solar these days. Did all of them have to start from scratch? They were already doing solar as electricians in Ukraine. Now they're here. Do you know the stories? I want to just pick your brains a little bit on folks coming from out of country and really whether they can prove that they have credentials here, or if they have to kind of go back to square one. How does that work? Anyone want to touch on that? Kai, I guess you did many years ago come from another country, but that was well before you were an electrician, but maybe you've met some others.
Yeah, I can touch on it. It's funny, actually, my parents, none of their education got accepted, so they started back at square one. But it's so I've lived through it. I've been able to live through it. But when it comes to the electrician side, I think it depends which countries. I know there's been a lot of leniency from the federal government on immigration, which has obviously been a big, I'm not going to get into political side of things, but it's been a big topic of discussion, and has been kind of pulled back recently, and there's been a lot of changes made. So I think that will heavily impact labor supply as well. So I don't know exactly what it's like for who gets accepted and who doesn't, but there is definitely limitations to it. So it kind of depends on where they're coming from and what they do, and then how they kind of integrate into the process. Because I know I've seen that as well with the Ukraine side. And I think it might just be the apprenticeship and having to restart in a lot of those moments, which is, again, unfortunate if they can prove that they've done the electrical trade and that they're good electricians.
Yeah, I was reading the government of Alberta's website the other day, and it seemed to imply that the only country whose certificates we would recognize was the US, sorry. We are all America, the US of A. We have to change our language these days. Again, don't want to get too political, but it seemed to be that it was the US and Canada who would recognize each other, but not much beyond that. How about you, Tanner? Anything to add on that? You're muted right now.
No, I don't think so. I think they covered it pretty well.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Rayanne?
Yeah, I actually worked with an Australian fellow who had a ticket from Australia, and he was moved up to a 4th-year apprentice. I don't know, there was some equivalency paperwork that he filled out and was working as a 4th-year apprentice, which was sometimes funny because he didn't quite understand some of the circuits here, and I was a 2nd year explaining to him things or going, why are you doing that? Which then our boss was laughing behind us at me scolding him. But yeah, he just needed to work, I think, the 1 year and write the exam, and he would have had a ticket here. So he was working on a visa. And I think there's some agreements with Commonwealth countries for that type of thing where they have, there's proof for education to certain standards where they can fast track the process or have certain amounts of their apprenticeship and hours accounted for, so they can streamline that process or cut the time down significantly.
Yes. I'm always racking my brain trying to think of how we're going to get our members more electricians. So this is why I have this question. But right now, Canada is not really bringing in many electricians. We were doing some research on that the other day, and they're not recruiting hard on that. And maybe it's because of the various limitations there. And as you mentioned, sometimes those are there for a reason, Rayanne. Sometimes there isn't equivalency, and sometimes there is. So we do have to be careful and make sure everyone's being safe. I do say to folks, if they're looking at coming into the sector, I often say, if you're coming from out of town, you'll probably have to come in with a little bit of humility because you might have to start from scratch. But the good news is you're going to get paid to start from scratch. So, that's not hopefully not as bad as maybe what your parents might have experienced, Kai, in different sectors where not only do you not get paid to start from scratch, but you actually have to pay a lot more to go back and retrain. And so I still think that it's a pretty good sector to be in, even if you are having to get back to square one from out of country or out of province or something. No, this has been really informative. We do have more questions in the chat. So what I would ask is, if you are open to it, please put your emails in the chat for folks to follow up with you directly. Or if you have a generic work email address you'd like to share, folks can reach out. Also, you can always reach out to us with additional questions, office@solaralberta.ca. We are happy to follow up on any of the questions that didn't get answered tonight. And I apologize that we couldn't get to all of them. We just have to use the most upvoted technique because these sessions are just always so popular. That's the only way to prioritize questions. So thank you, everybody, for putting questions in the Q&A, very interesting ones. And of course, thank you so much to our speakers tonight and to Miss Betty for kicking off the solar show with us. we were all finding your story so inspiring. I must admit, I was just like quite overwhelmed here, being so excited. A lot of things that you think are extremely normal to someone like me who has literally never connected anything in my life. Rayanne, oh, you're just gonna connect it, you just do that. I'm like, oh yeah, you just do that, whatever that is. So I just loved hearing your stories. It's super inspiring. And also, I just want to acknowledge that not every electrician is willing to do this sort of public speaking, because it is something that is, I guess, most Canadians, their number one fear in life is public speaking. And I've heard that they are terrified of that beyond death. So, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for your willingness to get up here tonight and share your stories. It is special, it is unique, and it is appreciated. So yes, for those of you who are with us the rest of the week, we'll see you tomorrow. And if not, do make sure to check out some of our other sessions on our YouTube channel in the coming weeks. Thanks to our sponsor and of course our staff for pulling this all together. And hope you all have a wonderful night, and just stay warm, because you could stay warm the way Rayanne did in the very Canadian way of cross-country skiing before each session. So I think that will actually increase our attendance this week, though, that everyone's so cold. So I'm looking forward to, anyways, hanging out with the audience all week long. Have a wonderful night. Thanks so much.